And tonight we're talking about High and Low from 1963, directed by Akira Kurosawa, Spy number 24 in that Criterion Collection. Synopsis here from our friends at Wikipedia.
Woo!
A wealthy executive named Kingo Gondo, played by Toshiro Mifune, is in a struggle to gain control of a company called National Shoes. One faction wants the company to make cheap, low-quality shoes for the impulse market as opposed to the sturdy but unfashionable shoes currently being produced. Gondo believes that the long-term future of the company will be best served by well-made shoes with modern styling, though this plan is unpopular because it means lower profits in the short term. He has secretly set up a leveraged buyout, fancy terminology, to gain control of the company, mortgaging all he has. Just as he's about to put his plan into action, though, he receives a phone call from someone claiming to have kidnapped his son. Gondo is prepared to pay the ransom immediately, but the call is dismissed as a prank when his son comes wandering back into the living room after playing outside. However, it turns out that it wasn't just a prank, that his son's playmate, Shinichi, the child of Gondo's chauffeur, is actually missing, and the kidnapper has mistakenly abducted him instead. And of course, at this point, Gondo is just like, no, I'm not paying any ransom. Like, this is an insult to me. How dare he think he could pull this over me? So in another phone call, the kidnapper reveals that he has discovered his mistake, but still demands the same ransom and for him not to call the police. But Gondo goes ahead and does so because it's not his son. Gondo is now forced to make a decision about whether to pay the ransom to save the child or complete the buyout. After a long night of contemplation, Gondo announces that he will not pay the ransom, explaining that doing so would not only mean the loss of his position in the company, but cause him to go into debt and throw the futures of his wife and son into jeopardy. His plans are weakened when his top aide lets the Cheap Shoes faction know about the kidnapping in return for a promotion should they take over. Finally, under pressure from his wife and the chauffeur and the police kind of just being there looking on, Gondo decides to pay the ransom after all. Following the kidnapper's instructions, the money is put into two small briefcases and thrown from a moving train, and Shinichi is found unharmed. He's okay, folks. We all go home. However, Gondo is forced out of the company, and his creditors demand the collateral in lieu of debt. The story is widely reported, making Gondo a hero to the public, while the National Shoe Company is vilified and boycotted. Meanwhile, the police eventually find the hideout where Shinichi was kept prisoner. The bodies of the kidnapper's two accomplices are found there, killed by an overdose of heroin. The police surmise that the kidnapper engineered their deaths by supplying them with uncut drugs. Further clues lead to the identity of the kidnapper, a medical intern at a nearby hospital, but there's no hard evidence linking him to the accomplices' murders. The police lay a trap by first planting a story in the newspapers implying that the accomplices are still alive, and then forging a note from them demanding more drugs. The kidnapper is apprehended in the act of trying to supply another lethal dose of uncut heroin to his accomplices. Most of the ransom money is recovered, but too late to save Gondo's property from auction. With the kidnapper facing a death sentence, he and Gondo finally meet face to face. Gondo has gone to work for a rival shoe company, earning less money but enjoying a free hand in running it. The kidnapper reveals that envy from seeing Gondo's house on the hill every day led him to conceive of the crime. So, RJ,
Yes.
This was a rewatch for me. I watched it several years ago. And back then, I thought the movie was pretty incredible. I liked this movie a heck of a lot. I bought the Blu-ray because I needed a copy of my own, I think a year ago. And so it was quite the treat to rewatch it and watching it again. Yep, this movie still is awesome. I don't know. I could just start running through this thing. So it's based on a book, or it's loosely adapted. Ed McBain. So Ed McBain, American author, is from his 87th Precinct series. It's a book from like the 40s, like not really like a super well-regarded movie or anything like that, or book. It's called King's Ransom. Other than the central premise of the wrong son being kidnapped and the millionaire still being extorted for the money, and it's more like I think the Mel Gibson film Ransom, directed by Ron Howard. The millionaire, he never pays, but the day is still saved, I guess. Like they still win it, but there's no payment or whatever. But yeah, I think there's the idea of a man like from on high being humbled here is far more interesting. Like, okay, that'll come up more in the compare and contrast, I guess, when we talk about Ransom, which we will be doing, folks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, first thing you can notice about this movie, because the last time we saw Kurosawa, it was when we were talking about the Seventh Samurai. Hey, this isn't 16th century Japan. This is contemporary Japan in 1963. Toshiro's rocking quite the mustache in this here movie.
Oh, yeah.
He's looking a little bit more stout, looking very dad-like. He delivers such great concepts as shoes are not hats. There's a connection here between High and Low and RoboCop, because both these companies in these films are run by people referred to as the old man, who actually have no names at all.
Look at how that played out.
Yeah, I think that was a calculated move by Criterion back in 1998 when these were coming out.
Right.
Yeah, so there's he's a principled shoe factory manager. Shoes are his life. He's looking for comfortable, durable, yet stylish shoes. It's so strange when I was reading the synopsis for Wikipedia. Like, the whole layout is just like, is this a thriller about the shoe industry?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One scene I loved right off the bat with this movie is after he's kind of had his confrontation with the other members of the board who want him to come in on their side. After he basically kicks them out of his place and they leave in a kerfuffle. His wife comes in, not knowing the shot. She has no idea what's going on, and they're all very much lost face and very flustered. And yeah, I don't know. That's such a great little bit. I always love moments where character like that. Dramatic irony.
Dramatic irony.
Yes. So yeah, this movie's just got pretty well a quiet tension right off the bat. It draws you right in, and I mean the whole first hour of this movie is just set in that living room. You never even go upstairs. It's just in that room. You can't help but admire the design of that room with those curtains, the wood panels for the walls, which are actually really cleverly incorporated into the DVD design, because the inside cover of the DVD case, it's actually all wood grain. Which I'm when I opened that up, I'm oh, of course they noticed that, because that's one of the nicest things about this movie is just that room, the geometry of everything, the way the light moves, when the curtains are drawn, the patterning of those curtains, it's super well designed. And there's movies I've made up of just long shots, long takes, and two cameras basically navigating those spaces and those characters just talking. So I guess if you want to throw a criticism at this movie, RJ, when people have called into your family saying they've kidnapped you, did they immediately believe the person on the phone?
Well, I'm a bad example because I've been kidnapped a lot, and it got to the point where they just stopped caring anymore, and they were starting to encourage people to take me. Right. So I'm a pretty bad example for that, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You want a little proof, right? Let that kid talk. Skype him in over the internet, bro.
That's right. Yeah. Come on. Gotta give me some evidence. Gotta use Netscape email.
Yeah, I was gonna say, send him an email with the kid handcuffed with 90s grunge rock music in the background.
Yeah. So
should we mention that we also watched Ransom starring Mel Gibson? So whenever we talk about stuff from the 90s, we're talking about the 90s remake starring Mel Gibson called Ransom.
Yep.
Just in case anyone didn't pick up on that.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. So here's some notes. God, the subtle change of, oh God, don't kill my child, I won't call the police, to fuck the kidnapper, this guy's insulted my pride, so fuck your kid, driver. It happens just a turn of the dime. It's just as soon as oh, it's not my kid's fine, oh whatever, so fuck, we don't care. It's just gets reckless immediately. That was good. But man, we've been talking about sadness on this show, but man, every time the boy's father that's been kidnapped, the chauffeur, he is so sad.
My God.
His body language and face, he is just devastated, and he sells it so well.
Yeah, he's so cute, and he is so sad. So Andrea actually watched this with me, and every time that guy popped up, she's like, "Oh my God." She's like, oh God, like you just feel so bad for him because he's like, he's like shoulders are put up and his head's like down. He's just cowering because he feels so small, and he's like, I can't do anything. I am completely at your mercy. That guy's awesome.
Oh yeah,
I
like
liked
his
him a lot.
yeah, and I mean like every time it's just like, oh, he's just like in the frame, and he kind of moves out of frame, but he's just on the edge, and he's just looking away and down because he's just like, he doesn't know, because it's like you find out it's like, oh yeah, his wife's dead, and like it's just him and his son now, and now his son's been taken. You're like, oh, like laying it on, but yeah, just. I don't know. I think, was it last week I was complaining about like CGI and like modern movies like not like really utilizing depth of field, and it's like, here's a movie that shows you can design rooms that are real and like lay things out that are real. You have rooms where people are just talking in rooms and like have like a real weight to it, instead of and like no roving cameras moving through boardrooms of just and people just staring at one another and yammering. It's like
the room's great.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like, I was gonna say quickly, the thing with like, I just went through that list of people's favorite Criterions, and like I was thinking about 12 Angry Men a lot when I was watching this movie too. It's just like, it's just like that first hour is just this like scene inside of a room essentially, and it's just it's all blocking, knowing where to set up your characters, have your actors play out their roles, and like just their body language. Like you're just watching like characters move, like people turn their backs at the right time, and they're just like doing these things that like you take totally for granted. And I mean, it's a real credit to Kurosawa's planning. I was reading in one of the essays Donald Ritchie wrote. He was like actually on set while they were making this movie, and like during the filming of a scene in this space, and just like the precision of everything, like all the actors were like planned out ahead, and they were blocked, and then it's a matter of figuring out lighting, and then figuring out where the cameras are going to move, and it's like super and it's slow paced. Like there was no rush. He was, I guess Kurosawa was an incredibly patient man, just working through what everything needed to be so it would be accurate or just right. And like this like just the whole hour, it's like, and like I said, like going back to like that tension is something else.
Well, it shows. Like you're saying, like that first 50 minutes, it's so good. Like the room is like a character in itself. Like you've touched on it already, but like the way the room is set up is awesome. And just like yours, that first 50 minutes, it plays out like it's like a play almost, because it's just dudes in one room talking to each other. But the organization and like the way it's the way they have the characters move around, so like something will happen and everyone will stand up at the same time, but everyone's looking in a different direction. No one's looking at each other. Like the staging is so well done. Like what you just said totally makes sense. It's like, of course they like took a lot of time and figured it out, because you can totally tell just watching it. It dazzles you. It dazzles your eyes, Jarrett, because you're like, man, this is like so well done. The whole setup is just orchestrated perfectly.
Well, because like and like I said, like with that blocking, I mean, there's this like scenes where it's like everyone in the room turns away as they go off kind of their edge of the frame, and then you just know they're being overwhelmed or haunted by the grim reality of the situation. And like like every time it's like you get sad chauffeur driver that everyone's kind of thinking of, and like his son, and like all the excuses that poor Gondo are making, like, oh, I can't do this, and he's just making he's talking and talking and talking, and they're just like, oh man, like there's no justifying this dude. You have to pay. It doesn't matter. Like you got to pay. And like the movie like really does a good job. Like I mean, I've watched it before, but like I don't remember very much of it. And like I kind of like I was like, what? He doesn't, like he wakes up in the next morning and he's like, no, I'm not paying. He's like totally steadfast, and you're like, what? It's like that doesn't make any. He's like, no, he can't be. Like this is nuts. That's like no one can be this like stubborn. No one can be this obstinate. But so really well conceived characters, like right off the bat, like and his like slimy sidekick, his like executive, who's just like, what he's doing, like it before he knows it, and he's like, I just gotta go, I'm just gonna leave right now, and then he keeps getting called back in, and he's like, well, where is he going? And you become more, why is he wanting to leave? And then it pieces together, because you get that throwaway line where he was walking them out, and you get this like when he was out by the car and just said like, hey, if there's a place for you in this organization if you help us out here. And you get those little moments, and like all that stuff is just laid out super, super well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll go on. But like, so RJ, what did you think of the movie?
This is probably the worst movie we've watched so far.
Oh yeah, it blows away Walkabout and Salo, RJ, for
Yeah.
you.
No, this movie's super dope. This is like top 5, I think, so far. Everything about it was really good. I was entertained the whole time. I was at the edge of my seat. I think number one, I think this movie just has a great setup. Yeah. Like, what an amazing story about like kidnapping, but it's the wrong guy, but it's still like puts even more pressure on the person. It's fucking amazing. I really like that. What do I have to say? I think the police are just the coolest motherfuckers in the world. They're so dedicated to it. Like, they come in disguises. When he calls, he's like, open the blinds, and they all like jump on the floor and are like crawling around like slugs and shit. Like, that stuff is all really good. The police are actually shown really good in this movie.
Yes.
Like later when they show like the debriefing, and there's like 50 cops, and it's all like, it's just like the division of jobs where you have certain people doing certain things, and like you can tell like all the cops are kind of like on the same page, and you get the Japanese George the Animal Steel, the big bald guy.
That's my note.
Is it?
No, I wrote because I kind of hopped over it because I went into the blocking thing, but Taguchi might frighten the boy. You George the Animal Steel, ugly motherfucker, you.
That it was one of the first things I wrote. I was like, "Whoa, this guy looks like George the Animal Steel."
Detective Taguchi, and he gets like the best line in the movie.
Yeah. Which one? Those people are assholes.
What a bunch of assholes!
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. Is like in the cop meeting, he's like, the way they paint Japanese cops is so like straight. He's just like, oh, those people are assholes. Like, the cops are just there. They're trying to do their job. Like, and they're good at it too. Like, all the stakeout stuff and like undercover stuff at the end is so good. Which brings me to one of my favorite parts. One of the undercover cops at the end has a button-up shirt where the bottom part of the shirt is tied up into like a little knot, like a belly shirt. It's super fun. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but it is amazing because he's like in a club and he's got a shirt like tied off at the belly button, like in a knot. It's like, why did he do that? Like, what's his disguise? I don't get it.
Right.
Yeah, the chauffeur is super cute. Yeah, that was a note I had.
I like. I love. I guess we'll transition out from like, so yeah, you get the whole initial setup of like everything happening in his house, and then you get the actual ransoming, like where they drop the money off, and then so we're actually on a real train. They actually shot that on a train moving.
Oh, cool.
And I mean, this was like, again, going back to last week and complaining about fucking RoboCop, 2014 RoboCop, and its inappropriate like overuse of like handheld cameras and camera shake and stuff like that. Well, hey folks, here's an appropriate use of handheld cameras in close quarters when you can't, like, there's no way you could actually set up like proper cameras. Like, you actually have to shoot with handheld, but it also like fits like the tension. Like, it actually ratchets up suspense by using it, because like you have characters running close quarters and they're running, it's like intense and like shaky, and like they're running back and forth through the train, it's cramped and you don't know if they're gonna make it or not. It just like completely transforms it from like this like kind of like a very calculated, laid out tension building thing to like the release of that tension and like the like whether or not they're gonna get the kid back, and then like you get like you get the weird phone calls, and you get those things where like they're looking at people on the train, you don't know who's who, like, and they don't even play that up too much, but you're like, whoa, that person could be working with the kidnappers, like, because we've watched so many movies at this point where that they have done that, but they don't really do it in this. They don't pull the trigger on it, but it works so well because like you don't know, and then they get the money and goddamn, they get the kid back.
Yeah, they do pretty good.
Yeah, they do. It's like, okay, the kid's saved, and then we get to see chauffeur, like, he gets his confidence back, and he's like, and now he's like slapping his kid around. It's like, come on, you got to remember, you got to do your duty, and like, because it's like, he's like, now he's like the high demanding Japanese dad that we all know from pop culture. And then, but then you get the completely diminished Gondo character, who's like, he's like just been
Emasculated.
Yeah. And so he's been gutted. He's just like he doesn't talk. He doesn't talk until he gets some of the money back. The rest of the movie, it's him like mowing the lawn and just like in his suit and just sweating like a pig. And yeah, like he's just been completely eviscerated, and like he's just so like defeated. Like the position's changed, even though he's done a great thing and he's being celebrated, but it's like he's going to lose everything.
So good.
Yeah. And so we go from the high to the low, and
shit.
and then we get to the procedural, and that whole sequence, like it turns into a different movie. And I mean, I've seen some people like kind of like not as big a fan of the procedural stuff, but I love cop shows. I love that. I love that shit. I love investigation stuff. I watch The Wire. I'll even yeah, so I love that, and like so this is like still right up my alley, and it's really well done. I mean, all it is like that whole scene like you were talking about, where they're just like standing around and like kind of talking about their evidence and like building up stuff. It's all like this is how a case is made, and it's all laid out really methodically. And like
sorry. Oh, I was gonna say, I also think like that shows like the editing is so good in this movie, like the way that Kurosawa tells the story too, because the cops are all like telling their story, but like it goes from them talking to just scenes of them like doing the stuff that they're talking about, which I love. Like I love stuff like that, and like I feel like that's one of those like commonly overdone things now. But I feel like when this came out, maybe it wasn't done that much. Like I don't know, I haven't seen it in too many pre-60s movies. Like I know this is 63, but like you know what I mean. I thought that was all awesome, and again it just showcased like the cops stuff so well.
And everyone's sweaty. People are like patting down their armpits, wiping down their bald heads, and just like they're sweating their balls off.
George the Animal's got that fan that he's always just carrying around, because it really shows like it gets the idea of like Japan just being a dank, humid, like heat box, like so good. Because everyone's so sweaty.
Yeah. Well, there's like that really amazing shot too, where like it's the pan, like when we actually get introduced to the kidnapper, and like him walking back to his like shack, and then like they kind of pan back like through like him walking along, and there's like this like kind of like the drain, the river drainage or whatever it is, and you see the reflection of the house in the water. It's just like so good. I don't know.
It's because like it's like we were saying, that house is like a character. Like it's just looming over the entire like shanty like town. It's awesome.
Well,
like,
it's interesting too, because I guess like the actual Japanese title is like it translates to heaven and hell.
Oh yeah.
So
that sounds good.
Yeah. So I mean, like I guess like the American version is the high and low, which I mean it plays to the same idea. I mean, if there's one thing we've talked about before with the Criterion Collection is they like to talk about class. They like to talk about class structures, and this movie totally fits right into that. I mean, it's even in Seven Samurai, and it's like probably in like a lot of Kurosawa's movies. But yeah, next note here. I think when they start driving. Shinichi, the kid who's kidnapped around, there's like, hey, he's like looking over there, and it's like, what is it? I peed over there. That's really funny. That whole scene is good too, like just showing the shot of like the kid's head, and then like all the stuff moving in the back of the window. That's awesome. Yeah. And talk about fish offal, and just like old school police investigation when they find the car, and like you get like you get their reactions, and like when they all go quiet when like a big piece of evidence gets hit, and you're like, oh yeah, the police are selling the fact that's like that's a nice piece of evidence right there you just found, buddy. That's a good lead. It's basically an hour and a half into this movie that we get like the actual movie score. Which when it hit, I'm like, oh, that's like the perfect time to use the movie score right now, and like couldn't do it any better.
That's actually something I noticed too. Like, I think I looked at Andrew. I was like, I think that's the first time there's been any music in this movie at all, like a score, and it was like at an hour and 30 or something.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was, hour and a half.
Crazy.
My next note here is the more innocent times of honest heroin dealers. After like they find like the bodies, and they're like, oh, a heroin dealer would want their clients to overdose, and because it's not good for business. And it's like, yeah, that's like the 60s, and that's like good logic back then, I suppose. Maybe in Japan. They're a little bit better heroin dealers, but yeah. And then we get these zombie heroin addicts.
I was gonna say, how dirty is that?
That harrowing scene. Yeah, that scene's like so weird, and like I'm like, oh, gross. But then it's like, then you get like the nightclub scene as like kind of like they've got their man. They just gotta they gotta nail him dead to rights. So they're doing the tailing game, and so you get to hang out at the multiracial bar where there seems to be there's all these black men are around, which is like I think it's like maybe in 1963 Japan this was like edgy, but then I'm like in my mind I'm like, wait, they're all just like servicemen, like they're all American soldiers like hanging out. That's about it. And it's like, I don't know, I read like and actually one of the other essays in the book, they kind of mentioned how that part hasn't aged well in the sense that like what the kind of the depiction of the hell, the low world, it's like it's still like it's not as bad as like how awful like business executives and like corporate structures are, and like how cutthroat everyone is, like the creditors in this movie who are just like, you think they're kind of going in one direction, where like, we're going to forgive your debt because you did the right thing and you can pay us back when you get that money back. Right. But they're like, no, fuck you, we're going to take your house. And like that, and then there's the ending where like they get the money back. They save the day, kind of, but then it turns out no, they didn't. They didn't really save the day. He's lost everything, and you're like, that took me back because I didn't remember that part from the movie. I was like, oh, he lost everything, but he seems like humbled, but he seems happy. Just like the Gondo character in this movie is like so well drawn. Like the scene where he takes the suitcases that they're going to put the money in and put the smoke capsules in, and he's like, get my tools, and it's like so you get to see him like go back to his roots and making the shoes, not just being the manager of that shoe factory. Such a great little character moment, and he does seem happier, and he's motivated to start from scratch and just build up from there.
And you figure, things are going to work out for him because he's a quality guy. Because that's the whole reason there was the conflict. He's like, I want to make good shoes.
That's right.
You motherfuckers.
Yeah, hat doesn't matter. Your shoes, that's the base of your body. That's where it's
everything,
it supports
man.
Everything. That's when I became aware that my own shoes, because I've been walking so much this last year, they have like worn down in the spots where I walk the most. So I think I need to get me some new shoes.
Well, Mifune was right, I guess. You got to get it. It's an important part of your life, Jarrett.
Yeah. And then the thing that all the things in this movie that I remembered the most was the very end, like the last scene of this movie, the exchange as ransomer and ransomee come face to face. You know
what's so funny about that part? The first thing the ransomer says, he's just like, "You seem well."
Yeah.
It's like what like ex-lovers would say like when they meet for coffee. It's just like, you seem well.
Yeah.
You seem to be doing well for yourself.
Yeah.
That scene's awesome.
Yeah, that's
like unhinged he gets.
Yeah. Well, cuz he's like he's trying to fight the fact that he's going to the chair and that's it.
Yeah.
And he's dead, and it's like Gondo just seems like kind of sad about it all. Like he's like, oh man, was any of this worth it? This is terrible, and like nothing came of it. Like it's just like I don't know. Yeah, it's a great ending to awesome. Excellent movie. This is like top tier stuff. For me, it's like it resonates so much more with me than like Seven Samurai. I just think it's like a great movie. Probably like I don't know. We'll see as we watch more Kurosawa movies, but I think it's like it's like it or Rashomon. But yeah, they're top stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I knew this would be good because I like this Kurosawa guy. Yeah. I think he's got a good career ahead of him. But I knew it would be good. But when we watched it, I was like, yeah, that was really fucking good.
Yes.
I will say one thing though, just a little offhand comment, and it's not about the movie. But this is a major criticism of Criterion Collection in general. White subtitles.
Oh yeah, they're bad in this.
This has come up before when I've watched Criterion's with roommate Scott, because he's got some like poor eyesight. So there are some movies where the white subtitles kind of fade into the background. This movie, it is like
it's rough.
I have really good vision. And there were certain times where I was like, oh man, I can't see what's going on, because they're in that like white room and everything's white, and the subtitles just totally blend into the background. It's not a comment on the movie. It's Criterion Collection. Someone should have watched this movie and been like, ooh, we should do black subtitles instead.
Or no, the solution is actually drop shadow, because what it does is it's a bit of an offset that you would put under the white, so it just differentiates it from when it's white on white. And it's so weird.
That's what they need.
That's what exactly. Yeah, I noticed it too on this one. I didn't even write that down, but I was noticing. I was like, I wonder if RJ will see anything. And now you have. And so it's a problem, Criterion. We know you're listening.
We know you're out there.
What the hell, guys? When you go to repress it, fix that, okay? Because that's like the only thing I'd say against it.
I figure a lot of people out there, like looking at you, you got glasses on, so you got some kind of bonky eyesight.
Oh, I'm blind as a bat.
So a lot of people have eye problems, and it's not that easy to see white on white.
Well, what's crazy though is like nowadays that people still put out movies and they don't have like closed captioning or subtitles, which is really
it's pretty weird.
Kind of frustrating, because like there's times where I'm watching movies like late at night and I want to turn down the volume, and then I'm like, well, if I have to turn it down that low and like the furnace is going and it's kind of like a lot of ambient sound, I want to turn the subtitles on so I can at least read and follow along. But then they don't even have it, and you're like, oh, great.
Great.
Yeah.
You know what movie does have subtitles?
What?
Ransom.
Sure.
Were you gonna say that?
No, I was gonna say. Well, hey, you know who also fits into the same sentence as Akira Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune? Ron Howard and Mel Gibson.
Well, maybe not Ron Howard, but fuck yeah, Mel Gibson, baby. Man.
So, folks, a couple weeks out, I realized High and Low was coming up, and it just popped into my mind. I'm like, wait, isn't Ransom based on the same book? And I'm like, oh, and Mel Gibson. Hey, RJ, are you going to watch Ransom? And you're kind of like, why? And then I'm like, and I explained, you went, oh, yeah, shit, yeah, it's going to happen. I was originally going to leave it up to him to cover it, but I also decided to watch it because I never saw it when it first came out. This was all new to me. I skipped over this movie back in the day. I think everyone pretty well remembers Ransom for one thing and one thing only, and that is Mel Gibson bellowing out,
"Give me back my son."
Yep. And so here we were. It's like, well, this is the best time as if there was any to check out Ransom from 1996. So I don't know. It's the exact same plot, more or less. This movie's got an amazing cast of 90s people. Just like every minute someone else shows up and you're like, whoa, it's them. Whoa, Liev Schreiber. He's my favorite, said nobody.
Liev Schreiber, Donnie Wahlberg, Runkle from Californication. Whoa.
Yeah, Lily's in there, man.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Ron Howard, this movie came out like basically at the peak of his like influence. I don't know if it's really waned at all, but I mean, this is like Backdraft had been coming out, Apollo 13. I mean, he was just making the hits, and this movie was also a hit because this movie also made a fuck ton of money.
Ooh, that's good for Mel.
Yep.
I don't care about Ron.
And Christ, yeah, Mel was like still pretty damn popular because I think this came out the same year or year after Maverick. And I mean, and this is like, Mel Gibson hadn't become the fallen son. That was still a ways away. I mean, this is the year after Braveheart. So, I mean, there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, coming off of Maverick, which is like him at his coolest, and then Braveheart, him at his coolest. All the pieces were lined up for Mel in this one, I think.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. So watching this movie, it really outlines. There's some missteps in this movie when you compare it to High and Low. So High and Low, one of the big driving factors that's like so excellent when this movie starts off is it creates this like setup where there's actual sacrifice. He has to. He's like got this whole idea, like this whole B plot of like, I'm going to take over the shoe factory, or I'm going to take over the business. It's going to be great. I'm going to make the business the way it is. And then this comes up, and the ransomer's asking for an exorbitant amount of money. And he's like, well, I have to now give up everything I need to do the right thing. Because one, it's not his own son, so he doesn't have to do it. But now he's like in this position where he has to do it. So it's like, great. Like that's like an hour of pure setup, and it's just people talking in a room. In this movie, they decide, you know what? He's super, super rich, and none of that actually matters. We're going to have this like stupid subplot about him like bribing Dan Hedaya. Yeah. And like it doesn't matter. It doesn't play into anything at all in the movie. I can't think of any way that it ties into anything.
It doesn't matter at all.
And there's no self-sacrifice. It's completely selfish that he wants his son back. But I mean, whatever, he wants his son back. That makes sense. But that's it. There's no real tension. Like I can get. Like, why didn't they ask for more money? They even make that point. Like
yeah, they do.
Because he's smart. Delroy Lindo informs us.
Because it would have been easy.
Oh yeah.
I did like him in this because I was like, man, I haven't seen him in anything other than Gone in 60 Seconds.
Delroy, isn't Delroy? Oh, I want to say, is he not in? What is? Oh, he's in Get Shorty.
He's in Get Shorty.
I just watched that recently, so he's like, that movie's also got an amazing '90s cast of just like character actors all come together.
Yeah.
He's got the hilarious line of when talking about kidnapping to Rene Russo. Believe it or not, this is rare. Like this idea that like this happens all the time, like because in her mind she must. And I'm thinking like, oh wait, this was like the mid '90s, so this was like America's Most Wanted and like children being kidnapped left and right all over the place, kids on milk cartons, and it's like, oh yeah. And so we have to reinstate this is rare, folks.
Yeah, and then leave it to Ron Howard to make it as grungy and depressing as possible, where they're just like forcing the kid to drink cough syrup, so he's like passed out, and, like with a heater right beside him, like make him really hot and drug him.
Yeah, like man,
I was so surprised by that. I was like,
grungy that stuff was.
Yeah, I was just like, holy fuck, Ron Howard.
Oh, but he like that was research though. I mean, they like looked at like because I mean, if you like look up this crime stuff and like see like there's like the Polaroids that these kidnappers types send to parents, and it's like duct tape over the eyes, smelly old mattress, handcuffs, and it's just like like that stuff taps into the fears of like people, and like so like audiences, they'd be like totally like, oh my god, this could happen to my little Billy, my little Sarah.
They got me.
They got you. They're like, what? This could happen to my cats.
Yeah, and I'd pay the ransom.
You pay that $2 million.
Yeah. Fuck your $2 million.
Yeah.
As Mel says.
Yeah. So movie proceeds along, and we get the strange decision in this movie where like he goes to pay the ransom. It goes wrong because that's what happens, and then he decides like on his way to go pay the ransom again to say fuck that, and he gets like, because he's rich and there's no real like tension in this, he just like, I'm gonna go get a TV spot on the network here in New York, and they're just gonna give it to me, and I'm just going to show up with this money in front of me, and I'm just gonna say I'm not paying the ransom, I'm gonna put money on your head. And like that, honestly, like I don't know, in this movie it doesn't really go anywhere particular. Like the whole idea is that like, I mean, at this point you think that they would be playing up the idea that like the kidnappers are going to turn on one another, and they don't. Oh yeah, so that's the other thing of this movie. They like don't even try to like create any suspense about who the kidnappers are or what they look like. They just show you like immediately, like as soon as that they're there, and they're just walking around in their kidnap mansion house, and they're just like, the kid's kidnapped, and here are your kidnappers. But then there's like the alleged twist that, oh my god, Gary Sinise, the New York detective, he's a villain. RJ, can you believe that Gary Sinise in a movie in the 90s is a villain?
I actually can't. He's never played anything other than an upstanding citizen.
Did you ever watch Snake Eyes?
I have seen Snake Eyes, but when did that movie come out? Like 15 years ago?
Maybe close to 20 years ago, I think.
Yeah, so that's when I saw Snake Eyes.
Yeah, so that movie, like I remember, like we were watching that, and I remember Gary Sinise popped up, and we all immediately went, "Oh, he's the bad guy," and like we were like not. Like that's like we were like 14, 15 years old, and we were just like, oh, he's the bad guy, and it was. It's like because it's Gary Sinise, because he looks like a rat bastard. Yeah. He is the Jeremy Renner of his era. Yeah.
Except for Tom Hanks movies, because like Apollo 13 and Forrest Gump, he's not like a total bad guy in those.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Oh, it's not. Oh,
Lieutenant Dan.
Robert Zemeckis once again.
Math.
Yeah.
But anyways, you're talking about Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise shows up. And so Gary Sinise, every time him and Mel Gibson actually get to do something together, this is when the movie's at its best. You could basically throw out the first like hour and 10 minutes, which are pretty typical like movie you'd expect it to be. But then you start getting Gary and Mel on the phone together, and they just like, this is the point where like Mel said like, fuck it, I'm just like, I'm going to put a ransom on your head, and dead or alive, because that's legal apparently. So no one seems to have any issue with the legality of this, I guess. And then so Gary Sinise and him, they have a chat, and then things just keep escalating. And Gary Sinise, he turns on them because he makes actually the fairly intelligent decision to be like, hey, I can make $4 million and get like handed the money right off the bat. And he kills all his accomplices, and that's like, looks like that's going to be it for the rest of the movie. But then things, of course, have to proceed from there. You get a kid piss himself and like stare, like so. So
that scene is fucking crazy. Me and Andrea both looked at each other because the kid's double taking. He's like looking back and forth, and he's like peeing his pants. You're just like, Jesus Christ, Ron Howard.
I just keep laughing. That scene I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
It's so like oh, of course they did this scene, like it's perfect. It's like, I don't know, there's one comment I'll make too, is like once like Mel Gibson takes matters into his own hands, I was reminded of like the 90s thriller cliche of how the individual person will triumph where law enforcement will fail always. Like, because like law enforcement's always incompetent. You can't trust the government to like handle things properly. It's about the person to do it right, and that's like always how these movies, like that's the only way they can be like interesting, because otherwise the police just show up and then they take care of everything like they do in real life, more or less.
Sure.
I don't want to editorialize too much there, but that's like, it's like that's what every 90s thriller boils down to, is the police are powerless to help you, or you can't trust them because they're trying to get you on bribing people on federal law, which you actually are guilty of. You just admitted to it, but that's okay. I'm going to forget all about that. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, that's actually like, that's one thing Andrea said. She was like, these FBI agents haven't done fuck all. Like Delroy Lindo, he just doesn't do anything when compared to the night before we watched High and Low, where those cops are like crawling on the floor and doing like so much work for it and stuff like that. You're just like, man.
Yeah.
Because Delroy's just on the phone. He's like, what's up, baby girl? It's like, man, I'm glad we aren't rich.
Yeah.
And you're just like, but he actually doesn't do anything the whole movie. Even at the end, when there's the big shootout, like the street cops get him. Like Delroy shoots him,
they
but
cover him.
He just pulls up at the end and he's just like, ooh, I'm here, Mel.
I think he does shoot him. I think he shoots him the final 2 times, but Mel's already hit him once, and then he gets the cover shots. It's like, oh, Mel actually kills him though. So hey, that was actually, I wonder if Mel actually got the idea for Payback, like in like the staging of that movie from the end of this movie, because it's like you're in New York City, and like it's like, so did Mel really fall in love with New York, and he wanted to make like action scenes in this city? And I was thinking of Payback.
For sure.
Or Straight Up, as his cut is called.
Straight Up. Yeah, that movie rules.
Yeah, I like Payback a lot.
But no, yeah, so I agree with you completely. This movie, you can tell Ron Howard was like not sure of how to do things yet. And I don't know if like people know that people might argue that he still doesn't, but I mean, he had some good filmmaking points there, but then there are some major missteps. Like there's actually a lot of like weird, like not continuity, but like errors like that I noticed. Like one weird thing is like, so Mel Gibson pulls up to the house when they find the son, and then they walk him in and they find him and they take him out, and then they walk him, and Delroy's like, do you remember this lady? And she's like dead in the doorway. And it's like, wouldn't they have passed her to walk into the house in the scene previously? Like that's a really like small thing to say, but like I noticed a lot of stuff like that where just like it's like, this doesn't really make sense given like what just happened. So there's stuff like that. And then at the end of it was so funny, the end of the scene, Ron Howard gets so fucking art house where it goes like slow motion, and he just kind of saturates the color way down.
Desaturates it. Yeah,
desaturates it way down to like almost black and white, and you're just like,
yeah, this movie's got some shitty 90s slow-mo where it's like it wasn't actually shot to be slow motion. They thought of it after the fact. Because the movie opens up with that crap too, because it's like black and white, and then it comes into color for no reason. And then that reminds me of the beginning of this movie. So the whole beginning of the movie is like at his house, and he's having a party for this like new commercial he's just like the star of, because he's like a hands-on kind of corporate guy. He's old-fashioned, and it's like I don't know if you're familiar with like. I think the terminology is punch-up guys. So what it is like, so you have these scenes in movies where like characters are interacting in a party, and then like somebody in the background says something out loud, and it's like a funny line, allegedly
yeah.
funny, and there's like, oh, I bet you didn't see that coming, and then everyone laughs. But it's like those are like I guess like comedians, like for like money. What they'll do is they get hired to do punch up stuff for like major releases. Like they'll be there like, hey, write a funny line here, and usually it comes in the form of like a guy in a crowd saying something into a scene, and it's always done after the fact. It's just to spruce things up, and then you can just throw like a laugh track on. It's just like the lowest form of life sort of stuff. Like it's like I'm sure comedians feel really depressed about themselves when they do this, but they're not like sad when they get their paycheck and can make their rent and stuff. But this movie's like the whole opening is just punch up guys, and like it's people yelling bad, unfunny things, and Mel Gibson having to pretend to like laugh at it, but he actually doesn't because he's not in that scene. It's all the other assholes watching the video, and then he shows up after the words because he's not, so he doesn't actually get sullied by that bad Hollywood trope.
He's too cool for that shit, buddy.
Yeah, he is. Ransom, it's fine, it's okay.
Yep.
It's an example of this sort of filmmaking, but it's not like it's not great or anything. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. This movie is just all right. It has some pretty cool stuff, things I like a lot. There's some weird stuff in there, but to be honest, I was entertained. Also because maybe because my best buddy Mel Gibson is in there. But yeah, it's fine. I liked it. I like seeing Mel do stuff in anything. So.
Awesome.
So there you have it. Cool. Fresh take on the 1990s classic.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, we missed something. We got to talk about who on earth hates High and Low.
Oh God, I don't even want to know those people.
Oh yeah. Well, I had to dig deep. Like there's like pages and pages of just people who didn't like give star ratings. They just watched the movie and like they wrote reviews, but they didn't star it.
Yeah.
So I don't care about those. I care about people putting their names to numbers, baby. So, our one and only 1-star review from Josh. Admittedly, this just isn't my type of film. However, when I hear thriller, I expect to be thrilled. High and Low has one good scene. That's it. The scene is a very good one, but still, the first 45 minutes are an excruciating bore. And though there's a definite uptick in action when the bullet train scene hits, the rest of the film isn't anything I could recommend. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, bud.
Thanks. Steve Sandberg, he gave this 2.5 stars. Will I be shunned by the community for being pretty cold on this one? It's weird how the first 45 minutes set exclusively in one room are so much more tense and involving than the 90 minutes of police procedural tedium that follows. Credit for the craft and all, but I was just hugely bored. Exasperating it were the white subtitles against black and white images of rooms full of men in white shirts. Struggling to read it did not make this a more enjoyable watch. As far as the themes of social class, they seemed irrelevant after the first act, only to resurface at the end when I was way too detached to care. Maybe I missed something, but this was a big mistake as a Criterion blind buy, a movie that feels about as long as Seven Samurai, but is never as good.
Oh, yeah, that's not fair.
And then there's one guy's review. He actually wrote quite a bit. 2.5 stars. And of course, he's one of these guys who thinks he's smart by saying 2.5 stars. What must I be thinking? This is called one of the best films of all time. I must have seen something different. I just couldn't connect with it in the slightest, no matter how much I tried. I really, really did. I'm so sick of reviews that like are written this way. Like they like, what? 2.5 stars? What am I thinking? It's like, no, tell us.
What was I thinking?
Like, edit it, please. Just take that out forever. So this guy, he loves Seven Samurai and Rand. Hand me High and Low, tell me it's a film dealing with class issue, the role of the law, capitalism, ethics, consequences of actions, and above all told in a crime drama directed by Kurosawa with Mifune. I'd say, fuck yeah, put it on right now. But for some reason, I just could not connect with this. And that's another one about connecting. I don't know what that means.
What does he mean, like emotionally or physically?
Insertion? I don't know.
Oh.
Gondo's sequences at the beginning had no effect on me. No tension or claustrophobia as others praise it for, though the beginning twist was excellent and surprising. a fantastic premise, but horribly unnatural expository lines such as, what? You've kidnapped my son? Just bring me out of it. Not to mention the movements and pacing of actors in the shot felt so staged. It had no unmistakable whiff of stilted fakeness. It had an unmistakable whiff of stilted fakeness about it. The second act is the investigation, what I felt to be the most engaging. It's kind of funny. People have very different takes on these things. They get into the nitty-gritty details of it all, much like David Fincher's Zodiac over 40 years later. Listing evidence becomes mysteriously captivating. Also, the chimney smoke scene was brilliant, unexpected, and satisfying, tying up a loose end from earlier. That pink smoke, RJ.
Yeah.
Yep, that's sure. The third act is by far, however, the weakest. It concentrates mostly on the kidnapper and the detectives further investigating. The kidnapper has no motives whatsoever, despite minimal and unconvincing effort to do so in the very last scene. Not really. I think the movie actually actively makes it. It's like a motiveless crime, more or less.
Yeah.
And it seemed incredibly convenient for this kidnapper to do such a thing at a pivotal time for Gondo. While the investigation was interesting, is because oh my god, well, god damn it. Well, I don't read these before I read them. I just read them, and I get to experience it with you all. While the investigation was interesting, it is because it is presented you with a list of candidates for the culprit. The executives needing far more development in scenes as they were the prime suspect, but instead the film goes, hey, here's another dude out of nowhere, not connected at all to the story we set up, and he did it. There's actually some people who feel like they get misled. They thought there was like more to the movie than they expected. Like they thought that like Gondo was in on it or something. I've heard people like with crazy ideas about what the real story should be, and it's like, nope.
No, I think it's pretty perfect the way it is.
And the movie just talked. Sure, Mifune is great. I don't get it. I didn't connect with almost a single aspect of the film. The cinematography and lighting is masterfully handled, as you can come to expect from Kurosawa, but the confusing, at times uneven, unsubstantiated, yet ultimately unsatisfying script lets it down for me. The pace drags awfully, blah, blah, blah. I'll talk about Seven Samurai and Ran instead. Okay, buddy. All right, friend.
Hey, Jarrett.
Yes.
Do you want to hear who hates Ransom?
Who hates Ransom?
Luke Gorham hates Ransom with a 2-star rating.
Okay.
You know what his review is?
What?
2 out of 5. C. Like the letter C for a C rating.
Yeah.
You know who else hates Ransom?
Who?
Victoria. 2.5 stars. C minus.
Whoa.
Why even write a review if you're just gonna put into like letters what your number rating is? That doesn't even fucking make sense.
Man, they're all
Okay.
There you have it, folks. People online are dumb. And hey, I think that's it for another episode. So hey, after the break, we're going to talk about what we're talking about next.